Hi, I'm Dan from Peerless Props, and in this video we're going to be making the Smite, Ego, Prism and Base knives from Valorant. So let's get started. So for this project I wanted to 3D print the props, and for that I needed a 3D model. Now there are some available online, but since I was new to this I wanted to make my own as a bit of practice. So I used Blender for this one and I'm pretty happy with how it came out. It's not as good as some of the ones you can download online, but I'm getting there. Once the 3D model was complete, it was time to get the file onto the 3D printer and get printing. To print this I used an Artillery Genius. Now this is where I was planning on putting a nice fancy 3D printing time-lapse. However, I didn't realise that it's not as simple as just videoing the 3D print and then speeding up the footage. So mine ended up looking like this. So instead of a fancy 3D printing time-lapse, you're just going to get a jump cut to the finished piece. Ta-da! After some false starts and a bit of calibration of the 3D printer, it ended up coming out pretty well. The only problem was this little error near the tip of the blade. Thankfully, it's nothing that a bit of epoxy clay can't fix. So after a lot of sanding and a bit of paint, it was good as new. With the master copy finished, it was time to make a mould, so that we could make copies of it without having to wait 30 hours for the 3D print and sand it for a millennia. For the mould, I used Smoothcast's Mould Star 30, and then for the cast, I used either Task 8 or Onyx Slow resin. Basically just whatever my local shop had in stock, as they're pretty much the same, just different demold times.
Two hours later.
Now to attach it all together, I just drilled some holes in the casts and put 9mm dowel through them. Now you may be asking, why didn't you just 3D model the holes and the little bars to put it together? Well, to be honest, I couldn't figure it out. But it would have also made casting it a lot more difficult, so in the end my dodgy 3D printing skills kinda worked out well. And with the casts done, it's time for paint. All of the colours I used are going to be on the screen. The Ego knife is up first, and this one was probably the hardest to paint, as all the masking was really fiddly, but the gold came out really nice in the end. The Smite knife probably took the longest of the four. The gradient was painted on by just using two colours and slowly mixing them more or less to get a slightly different hue, and then painting that on in bands until I got a nice smooth gradient, and then the lightning effect was just painted on by hand at the end. And last but not least, we have the base knife and the prism knife. Now these were the simplest of the four, as they were just single colours laid on top of each other. And with them all painted, it's time to show off some knives. So there they are, finished. As stated earlier, these are all available for purchase on my Etsy store if you wanted one, so the link for that will be in the description below. And yeah, overall I'm really happy with how these came out, and if you've made it this far in the video, thanks a lot for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.